Hi, everyone. Welcome to our next episode of the Data Dojo. Today, I'm really honored and thrilled to welcome Mariane Bekker. She is a powerhouse in the tech and venture capital world. She is the founder of Women Founders Bay, which has more than 500 women founded startups, and managing partner at Founders Bay. Women Founders Bay is a vibrant community of empowering women tech leaders in the Bay Area, something we really, really needed. So, very happy, Marian, you're doing that. With over 15 years of experience in growing engineering team in the Silicon Valley, including key role at companies like MindBody, you have led teams through 4 successful exits. You also have a newsletter, which is, I think, Founders Bay, which has more than 20,000 subscribers. And I personally check out all the events that you showcase. So it's very, very helpful. Beyond all your extensive work and in startups and venture capital, you are also a LinkedIn top voice for multiple, it keeps changing. And frequently you share a lot of insights on tech, leadership, diversity, and you're, of course, a passionate for advocate for increasing representation in engineering and venture capital, especially for minority communities like women, LGBTQ professionals. So I'm very excited to chat more and dive deep into some of your experience. Welcome to the Data Dojo podcast.
Thank you. I'm so honored to be here and thank you for the kind words. You should definitely be my PR agent from now on.
I would love that. Yeah, first of all, like very, very grateful for all the work that you've been doing. I've been living in the Bay Area for some time and, always looking out for opportunities like, where are all the women? Why can't I find more ambitious and driven women? And you have created such an awesome community, and it's very nice to have that kind of safe space.
Yeah, that's exactly why this community was created, is because when I was going to event, I was having a hard time meeting other women founders. And I know they are out there because women
Yeah.
start 50% of all the business in the US. We
Yeah.
start over 30% of all the tech startups in the US. So it's just a matter of connecting them together and providing them with a safe space where they can be themselves, grow their startups, and meet other like-minded women like yourself who are awesome.
Yeah. I mean, which was what my first question, and maybe you spoke a little bit about it, but like, can you dive a little bit deeper into what inspired you to create Women Founders Bay and how has it grown since its inception? It's hardly like a year old, right?
Exactly. It's fairly new. So after I was leading engineering teams here in the Bay Area for 15 years, at MindBody, I was head of engineering for their SF office, and I grew the team fairly quickly to over 50 engineers in Pune, in New York, in SF. But we were able to maintain a ratio of 55% women engineers.
Wow.
So then MindBody got bought out by one of the biggest private equity firm in the world. So then I exited that and I decided to pursue my passion full time of making tech more diverse. So then I started my own company, Upward Recruiting, to help companies hire more women engineers. And that grew super fast. And
Yeah.
suddenly I found myself being an accidental entrepreneur. I wanted to go meet other entrepreneurs out there. So I started going to different founder events. And then similarly to my experience being the only woman in the room as an engineering executive, I found myself being again the only woman in the room. So I'm like, well, where are the women founders? I know they are out there. I know they're super talented, but I can't find them. So I
Right.
really started this community for myself to meet other women entrepreneurs. But in a short period of time, we grew super fast. Now we're one of the largest and most active community here in the Bay Area. We do events almost every week. We connected thousands and thousands of women with investors, with mentors, with advisors, and then we also do free workshops every week for that community.
Yeah, yeah, that is awesome. And it's like a nonprofit. So anybody who's looking, a woman who is looking to, is there like they need to have like certain criteria of like already having customers, or they can just come in as with an idea?
So I always say, you know what, exclusivity kills inclusivity. So it is very open to any woman who has started a startup. The only criteria is that you have to be building a tech product.
Right.
And the other criteria is that you are working on your startup. But beyond that, we welcome
Mhm.
you with open arms. You have a space for you, you have a community that is here to support you.
That is
And if they
amazing.
thanks. And then if they want to apply, they can go to womenfoundersbay.com/apply to join the community.
Amazing. Awesome. That is amazing because a lot of people, have ideas, they're like passively working, but they feel like they're not enough because they don't have customers yet. So that's very nice that you've made it like not exclusive.
Exactly. And then every single entrepreneur started with not having customers, not having revenue. They all
Right.
started from the grounds up and they worked hard to get to where they are. So if
Right.
you are in that space, if you're just starting out, if you don't have yet traction or customers, don't
Mhm.
get defeated. We've all been there. You'll figure it out as you go along.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very well said. So pivoting a little bit, you mentioned in a couple of interviews I've seen that, and it's a well-known fact that women get like 2% of venture funding, and I think recently it even deteriorated a little bit. So even though we are doing our best, and I see so many women around me who are building companies, are there like systematic changes that need to happen, which potentially will take much more years than we anticipate?
So, you hit the nail on the head. So, right now, women are receiving less than 2% of VC funding. Last year, it decreased from 2.1% to 1.9%. So,
Okay.
this is not a thing that will be easy to solve, but I really believe that we can change it. And there's a few ways that we are doing that. First of all, we really need to change the conversation and the culture about what a typical tech founder looks like,
Mm,
right? Because if you
yeah,
think about a tech founder, when people think about that, they typically, think about a graduate man who just graduated and who
yeah.
maybe has some technical skills. But we need to change that conversation. And the
Mm,
way that we are doing that is one, by encouraging women to become tech influencers, right? Why
right.
is it that women only represent less than 20 to 30% of the influencers out there?
Mm,
And then in every event that I was going to, women were not represented on panels. They weren't pitching. Anytime you go to a pitch competition, maybe there's one or two women pitching for
right.
every 8 men pitching. So we
Mm,
need to change that perception. So now, I organize two types of event. The first type is women only events. And that,
mm,
of course, we highlight women, women come together, but it's
right.
not enough to change culture. We
Mm,
started throwing our own event for both men and women, but in all of the events that we throw, women are highlighted. Women make at least 50% of the panelists. Sometimes
right.
they make 100% of the panelists, but we want to change the perception of what a tech founders look like. So when you think about a tech founder, they think about someone who looks like me and you.
Right. Absolutely. We need more diversity and more representation. So
Exactly.
somebody from the audience who's listening who wants to be part of these panels, what is the best way to reach out?
Yes, again, go to womenfoundersbay.com/apply. Once you're part of the community, I'm always asking for women to volunteer. Every time I have an event, I put a open application to pitch. We are not trying to be exclusive or inclusive for all women. And every time we have a pitch competition or a panel, I try to get as many women who have
Right.
not spoken in the past in those panels.
Yeah, I can, yeah, definitely see how you're building and giving so many opportunities to people, especially women. In Bay Area, right, everybody I talk to is building and they're building in AI. And AI has sort of like democratized, like you don't need to be the best coder or you need not have the top-notch engineering skills in order to build. So how do you see like the future and every 3 or 4 months, like things are changing so fast, right? Like now it's all about AI agents. Previously, it was about like, fine tuning or RAG. So it's like continuously changing. But there are still unexplored segments, maybe like climate tech or like AI ethics, which are, even YC shared like startups they are looking for. So, what is your opinion and thought, like, given that you work a lot in the startup space, ideas or things that people, women especially, should work on?
Yeah, definitely. So there's a few trends that I think are really going to be the future. The first one is AI agents. Right now, the technology is not there yet for people to build reliable AI agents because the LLM themselves are not super reliable. But there are companies out there like the Agentic, for example, that
Mhm.
are building custom LLMs specifically for AI agents. So as
Right.
the technology becomes better and better, I think that agents will replace a lot of the websites that we're used to, a lot of the manual work that we're used to. So we're going
Mhm.
to see more and more of these startups pop up. The second thing is a lot of opportunities right now to apply AI in healthcare, because
Yeah.
healthcare kind of skipped the SaaS revolution. Like, how many of us still go to the doctor and are
Yeah.
completing paper? Like, they
Yeah.
are writing on papers, right? That's because they skipped the SaaS revolution. But now with AI,
Mhm.
because it unlocks so much productivity for healthcare providers, we're going to see more and
Right.
more change in that field. The
Mhm.
third thing, especially in healthcare, is biotech. So every week with my newsletter, I report on the biggest funding rounds happening in the world. And by far, it's always biotech that's been winning. And that's because
Mhm.
now with AI, we can
Right.
do better drug discovery, we can do drug targeting, things that have been unlocked that
Right.
haven't been possible in the past. The third thing is, like you said, climate tech. A lot of companies that are trying to solve for like energy usage,
Right.
even autonomous farming equipment,
Yes.
maybe better way to grow food that is less poisonous to us. All
Mhm.
of that AI will unlock. So I think if I have to predict the future, those are three different segments that women can take advantage of.
Absolutely. That's great advice. And like you mentioned about one of the questions I often hear from not just women is like these highly regulated industries like health and finance. You're the by the time you actually see the impact, because you have like these HIPAA regulations and all of that you need to figure out, it's they feel like giving up and like, hey, why don't I just build something like an LLM wrapper and like do something quick? The motivation to keep going for these highly regulated fields, like how can they overcome that?
Yeah, it's true. With healthcare, there's so much compliance and regulation. Okay, so here's the truth. Okay, if you do not have experience in healthcare, I don't recommend you go in it, because you have to have the network. Like, you need to know providers, you need to know how the healthcare system operates, you know, to know about compliance so that you have a better chance of succeeding. But let's assume that you have experience in healthcare, you have a competitive advantage when it comes to
Right.
it. I think there are two ways to build a company, right? One, you can try and go in your corner and try to build something that is like compliant, HIPAA compliant, maybe spend 2 years building it, then release it, and then it's a long sales cycle. But
Yeah.
that is very time and resources
Yeah.
intensive. So
Exactly.
what I recommend for these women founder is instead try to figure out a version of a product that you can build that
Hmm.
doesn't have to be compliant, that you can build in 3 months, that you can release and start getting
Yeah.
traction, right? Even if it's not the big healthcare, maybe it's smaller
Mhm.
doctor clinic,
Right.
maybe it's letter of intent. And with that, you're able to get funding. With that
Mm.
funding, now you can suddenly pay yourself, you can sustain yourself, and then you can go through the like 1 to 2 year cycle. So always trying to find a version that maybe
Yeah.
that's not as perfect as you want it to be, but that can
Exactly.
at least help you get the funding necessary for you
Mhm.
to keep going
Being
as
more
long
agile and yeah,
exactly.
makes sense.
Exactly.
Makes sense. And then there is like a lot of debate on like fundraising versus bootstrapping, and there are pros and cons of each approach, and I'm curious to know your thoughts about it.
Yeah, definitely. So Upward Recruiting, I bootstrapped it. And that's because it was more of a service business. And then I could make it profitable from day one.
Right.
If you are in a position where you can make a business profitable, you have the margins to do it, then try to bootstrap as much as you can.
Mhm.
But the reality of it is that a lot of startups will probably take a year for you to start making money. And unfortunately, now with how the startup ecosystem is, right,
It's
because
very
of
fast
the
paced.
economy, it's very fast paced, but also there's not, it's very hard to get funding because now
Hmm.
investors are more wary on what to fund. So
Right.
you'll need to make sure that your startup is fundable. And how you bootstrap until you make sure that your startup is fundable. But as soon as you're able to get funding, you should
Mhm.
definitely get funding so you can accelerate your growth. And there's a few things that make your startup fundable. One, do you have a large distribution channel, right? Let's say you are an influencers and you have like
Yeah.
20,000 followers. Most likely you'll find an investor that will invest in you because you have the distribution channel for your
Right.
startup. Two,
Right.
did you work in the field for 20 years and now suddenly you know all of the top executives that can be your
Right.
customers? That's
Yeah.
enough for you to get funding. Three, do you have a huge wait list, right? Let's say you have a wait list of 5,000 people who want to use your product. That's enough to
Hmm.
get funding. Do you have LOIs? So try to find these small
Some of
things
these
that will
got it.
increase your chance of getting funding.
Makes sense. Does like working for like one of the FANG companies or having like, Stanford or like one of the stellar university degree also help building credibility for investors?
It could, but you still need to find traction, right? Unless, let's say, you know you have a big network of angel investors, right, from
Yeah,
Stanford, or you have a big
right.
network of MIT, then you can get funding. But you still need to get that traction because right now, how are you going to make sure that, or as an investor, you need to make sure that you are de-risking your investment. So you need to show some kind of traction.
Got it. Makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. Those are really good points. I had no idea about that. A lot of people also have, people are immigrants, like countries filled with immigrants, and they have this hesitation, like, hey, I cannot quit my full-time job. I'm scared to go all out, or I don't know what the visa options are, and I don't know how much you know about this. Like, majority of founders are like ultimately immigrants. So, what would you advise them? Like, there are so many visa alternatives today.
Yeah, so I'm an immigrant. I actually was born in Lebanon and became a refugee in Canada when I was 7, and then I immigrated to the US after college. So I've been in the visa situation for a few years now. Um, the unfortunate situation is that it is very hard to get like permanent residency here in the US. So
Right.
what I did is I did get a full-time job until I got the permanent residency. And then once I got it, then I became an entrepreneur. But one option that you could do is try to get the O1 visa. So the O1
Yeah.
visa, you just need to prove that you're some kind of influencer. And that's easier sometimes to do. So you just need to make sure that one, start, you know what you can do? Start writing on social media, start growing your social media
Mhm.
follower, you start getting invited to be a speaker, to be a panelist, and you
Right.
can start getting those credentials to get the O1 visa.
Mm.
But the reality of it is that, you know what, without a visa, you can't stay here. So if you need to get that full-time job to get to that permanent residency, there's no harm in that, but you can still build your startup on the side, right? There's
Yeah,
nothing stopping you on weekends and night to build
absolutely.
it, but make
Absolutely.
sure that you are taken care of and then you can stay in the US.
Absolutely. And there are also options like with Owen Agent and like concurrent
Exactly.
H1. Like, let's say you want to do both simultaneously. So, yeah, like, there are options if you have the will.
There are options out there.
Yeah. You are pretty active on LinkedIn and you've advised multiple times like building your social media is very powerful. Is it true in the startup community as well? Like because you're working full time in building your product. Like a lot of people say, hey, I don't have time for like social media. I need someone dedicated to do that for me. But when you're starting up, you probably don't have either the funds or the resources to hire somebody full time. So, what are some strategies for someone who's picking up on social media game to like quickly build that consistency?
So in the past, right, social media may have been an option because social media was not as prominent now. But currently, the biggest distribution channel we all have when we're building any startup is social media.
Right.
No point in time did we have a tool where you could reach that many customers
Mm,
that quickly.
right.
So you thinking that, oh, I'm going to build my social media as an afterthought is delaying your ability to get customers, right?
Right.
But how do you start? Let's say you don't have a social media following. How do you start? Well, first off, what you have to figure out, okay, well, who do you need to sell to when you're building your startup? Who is your target ICP? That target ICP could be your target customers for social media. Like you
Right.
can basically think about social media as a startup. Okay, well, I need to reach women who are between 30 to 45. Okay, what are the demographic, what are their occupation. Once you figure that out, you can figure out where do they live. Are they on LinkedIn? Are they on Twitter? Are they on TikTok? Are they on Instagram? And then what do you personally like to do? Do you like videos?
Right.
Are you visual? Do you like writing?
Mm.
So once you figure those two out, then you can go and see, okay, well, who do these women follow? Who are the influencers that
Right.
they follow? Once
Yeah.
you figure out who the influencer are that they follow, you can see what type of content do these influencer
Mhm.
provide. And then you can start experimenting on your own. Okay, start producing content that is very similar. But also, I also want to touch on a point that you said. You said, okay, well, what if I hire a social media manager? That does not work because people now love to interact with real people, especially with how
Right.
much AI is spreading. So people
Mm.
want to follow you, not some kind of image of you. You have to be authentic on social media to
Yeah.
stand
Agree.
out.
Agree.
Um, so experiment with different type of content, share some personal story that you have, and then start
Absolutely.
following the people that you want to follow you because that's your way of getting attention. And then with the influencers, start commenting on their posts so
Mm.
that their audience get to know you and the influencers get to know you as well.
Absolutely. And there is like a quote which I truly believe is like your network is your net worth. People
Exactly.
who don't have a good network, there are so many opportunities that they are missing out on. So yeah, yeah,
Exactly. And I also want to add to that, even as you're building a startup, so social media will help you get customers, but
absolutely.
it'll also help you in fundraising. Like investors are people too. And if they've heard of you on social media, then immediately there's a higher trust that they have
Yeah.
in your ability to succeed. So if investors already heard about you and then you pitch to them, the likelihood of them giving you a funding is higher than if they never heard about you. So it's not
Mm.
only your ability to get customers, but also to get investors. And now I'm seeing more and more investors share that if you have like less than 5,000 followers, don't even talk to me, just because
Okay.
they know
Mhm.
how big of an advantage it is
It
to
is.
have a network and to have a distribution channel.
Absolutely, absolutely. And do you advise like to start off with like using AI tools, or would you recommend like maybe use it as a starting point, but like you said, like organic and authentic is what people really connect with?
Yeah, so you can, AI is just a tool, right? AI can help you in your spelling, especially, for me as an immigrant, English is my third language. So I do not write as well as someone who's natively speaking, right? So
Right.
AI can correct your English. Maybe they can help you construct the words better. They can give you
Mm.
ideas. So there's no shame in using it. Of course, use it to your advantage, but also you're the one creating the content, right? You're the
Right.
one telling AI what you want to create content with. So just see
Absolutely.
it as some kind of Grammarly that's just correcting you, giving you ideas, kind of a
Mm.
co-pilot. There's
Yeah.
no shame in using it. I use it all the time to like correct my English, and
Yeah.
it's been working really well for me.
Yeah. Awesome, awesome. That is great advice. One last question before we move to the fun segment. I know that a lot of women, I've heard some of them eavesdropping at some of these events, like they're like admiring your capability to manage your family, and like a lot of people don't know you're a mom of two kids, and it's amazing how you balance it all. You have a newsletter, you have companies, you host events, and then you have two kids. So how do you manage it all? Any tips for women who are
Yeah,
planning to manage a family and their ambitions?
it's definitely hard. It's not easy. I'm a single mom of two kids. And I think as mom, no matter how much you're kind of succeeding and balancing it, you're always feeling that guilt, like, oh, I'm spending
Yeah.
too much time at work, or I'm not spending enough time with my kids, or I'm not spending enough time at my work. There's always this dilemma that happens, and
Right.
I feel that all the time. So in a
Yeah.
way, I feel like sometimes I'm not managing it as well as I could be. But I think the key to balancing it is to have people around you that could help you. So
Mhm.
my mom lives close by, she helps out. My ex-husband takes the kids half the time, so I'm lucky enough that I have that freedom in time to kind of
Right.
manage the events and be social. So just find people around you who can help out,
Right.
and who can be your advocate. And I think that that'll help you manage your time.
Absolutely. Very well said. Personally, like I was raised by a working woman, and that was not the norm back then. And I'm so grateful because the quality of life that she was able to provide because of her working and hustling in her younger days, I'm very grateful. So yeah, there shouldn't be any guilt.
There shouldn't be any guilt. Exactly. And there's so many studies that show that actually the kids that are happiest are the kids that spend the better quality time with people. It's not the
Like,
quantity that matters, it's the quality time
quality.
that you spend with your kids.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Very well said. All right. So the next segment we have is called the lightning round. And yeah, I'm going to ask you some questions and you are supposed to answer without thinking too much.
All right,
All
let's
right.
go.
Your favorite LLM?
OpenAI.
Is there like a version or whatever latest they come up with?
Oh, the Mini O1
Yeah, that's a good one. Biggest AI challenge that you feel, is it data or compute?
data. I would
Yeah.
say
Clean
sometimes the data
data.
is not reliable and LLMs hallucinate.
Yeah, that's true. Most overhyped AI buzzword, if there is any.
Agents,
All right. Are you a coffee or tea person?
coffee.
Great. What's the best book or podcast that you've read recently, which you would like to share with the audience?
98 ways to talk to anyone. Great for
Wow.
networking.
Okay. Yeah, I will give it a read. Um, if there is one thing you could change about the startup ecosystem, I think I know the answer to this, but what would that be?
More women, more inclusion.
Absolutely. Are you a morning person or a night owl?
Definitely not a morning person. Definitely not.
Yeah. What's your like go-to hobby outside of work?
Hiking.
Oh, yeah. It's awesome. The best piece of career advice that you've received?
Always go for something you're not comfortable with. Always push for more. Don't be
Be
afraid.
comfortable
Don't,
in being uncomfortable.
exactly. Don't ever get comfortable in your
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good one. If you could invest in any futuristic technology right now, what would it be if you had to pick one?
I would say autonomous driving vehicles, and I did invest in one just
Okay.
recently.
Okay. Awesome. Like, look at how Waymo is like all over.
Exactly, but also like farming, delivery,
That's
drones,
true.
so anything that'll help people get from A to B.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, your prediction for AI's biggest innovation, it kind of is a similar question, but anything else?
Yep, I would say longevity and healthcare, helping us live longer.
Yeah. Yeah. That would be great.
Exactly.
All right. I think those were all my questions. Before we wrap up, I just want to say thank you so much for your time. Are there any parting thoughts you would like to share with the audience?
Yeah, I would say, you know what, if you are feeling overwhelmed with your life situation or uncertain about your startup, or you feel like you're not doing good enough, well, I have one thing to say: you are. Keep pushing. We've all been there. You can do it. There's always going to be ups and down in life, but your resilience is really what is going to make you successful. So keep on taking those
Absolutely.
risks.
Yeah, very well said. And yes, please check out Women Founders
This
Pay.
thing.
Yeah. And
Dot
then
com
it's
slash apply.
.com/apply. All right. I will link it to the podcast episode. All right. Thank you
Awesome.
so much, Marion.
Thank you for having me.